Welcome to the latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas, and this evening we are going to be talking about the way we label ideologies. With us tonight, Daniel Thomas, Thaddeus Paul Hamus, and Merrick Moses. Welcome, panel. We may get some short answers for this next question. Can you identify any policy position that could be associated with the contemporary Republican Party that you feel is humanly decent and not cruel to some segment of society? Dan, are there any Republican policies that you think are decent and not cruel?
The closest thing that I can come up with, and I already made reference to it, I'm hoping that I'm naming the right law, because Trump signed one and Biden signed one during COVID. The CARES Act was not inherently cruel and was intended to prevent the country from falling completely into free fall. Trump does get credit for signing whichever one he signed because he could have not. He also told Mitch to give Chuck and Nancy whatever they wanted, and Chuck and Nancy did a good job. But then
So Chuck and Nancy crafted that bill, and the Republicans went along with it because Trump said, okay, this is good for us.
But to your larger point, the Republicans need to have a policy platform in order for there to be a policy to determine if it's cruel or not. And all they really do is bully people. They're so caught up in this culture war stuff that they're so afraid of little Johnny being trans that they don't care about literally anything else. Like, that's their whole policy. And I already ranted about how that's cruel and hateful, and it's not a good thing. I mean, they have some economic philosophy, but their economic philosophy is based on making the rich people richer. It's not about giving anyone else more or giving anybody else the opportunity to have more and better themselves. So yeah, no, the policy Trump signed that the Democrats wrote, that would be the one thing they did that's not inherently cruel.
Okay, Merrick. Dan also mentioned the tax cut for the rich. That was kind of decent if you happen to be already rich. Can you think of anything beyond that the Republicans have put together that you would consider decent and not cruel?
Well, I had to dig in the crates, and I came up with an article from March of this year about making a lynching a hate crime. So in the House of Representatives, there were just 3 people that said that they are pro-lynching. And I'm trying to figure out who these people are. But at any rate, here goes. The only 3 no votes, and I'm taking this from Newsweek. I got to quote my source. Okay. The only 3 lawmakers to vote no on the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act were Republican Representatives Andrew Clyde from Georgia. I'm just so shocked. Thomas Massey from Kentucky. I'm equally shocked. And Chip Roy from Texas. Oh, I'm so shocked where they dragged James Byrd to his death through dismemberment. I mean, at least somebody in the party, at least, I don't know. I don't even know how many Republicans are in the House of Representatives. At least most of them voted to say no to lynching.
Okay, now, do you think it was because they promoted that particular piece of legislation, or they were too embarrassed to vote against it?
I think it was both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think there was some quiet lobbying for some of the more conservative members. But I think that it's really a bad look if you're like, yay, lynching. That's a bad look. Mm-hmm. And Chip Roy, who I think was in on the insurrection and participated in some ways, allegedly, let's say alleged, I think that he was involved allegedly in the planning of such and such insurrection craziness. I'm not surprised because he's, darn near white supremacist. He's loud and proud about it, Like it's kind of like turning on the light and you see the roaches and you're like, oh, you came out because it was dark. So that's how I feel.
Thaddeus, you know of any Republican? These guys came up with some pretty good ones. Apparently, they did their research.
Yeah.
Any Republican legislation or policy proposals that you say would not be cruel but decent?
Well, you've already mentioned the one that came to mind for me, and that's the Republican tax policies, which you got to say are downright Santa Claus generous, although only to the very rich. So that's not cruel to that segment of society. And they also have kept tax policies that do not tax the destitute, which at least doesn't add to society's systemic cruelty to that part of society. However, those policies really do sock it to the working class, especially the lower wage workers. So what's decent for one group of people winds up being so at the expense of another very, very large group of people. So I guess I just tanked my own argument.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the way I was looking at it too whenever I composed the question. On a recent phone conversation with a campaign manager of a Democratic candidate for Congress, actually, Dan, this is up in your district, I told him that while I consider the Republicans generally evil, the best way to describe the Democrats is inept. While many Democrats do support policies representing decency, the timid and feckless manner in how they try to get these policies manifested leave many proponents of human decency wondering if there might not be a better vehicle to achieve the desired objective. If you know a better way than hitching your wagon to the Democratic Party, let's hear it. Now, we're talking about 2 days after, we're recording this 2 days after this great victory lap that Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden were taking over getting Joe Manchin to jump in to the I don't even know what it is. It's not the infrastructure. I guess the climate change or the pharmacy drugs. I don't even know what they call this bill, but they're calling that, and it isn't even passed yet because Kristen Sinema hasn't come out and said she's supporting it. So
it's not written yet, so there's nothing to pass yet.
Okay. So let me go back to the question then, Dan. Is there another way than saying we got to be the Democrats to get this country back in the road to decency?
This is a nuanced question, so it is going to have a nuanced response, and I'm going to explain myself because it's going to come across as simple. No, there is not.
Okay.
But the Democratic tactics are not working. You need to have AOC would not be elected as a congresswoman in Pittsburgh. She would fail there. The district is too purple. But she is an aggressive fighter. So she is able to do some things that Connor Lamb, for example, cannot do. And I picked these two because I know they fight a lot. But Connor Lamb's need to be civil and need to reach across the aisle is not necessarily getting him anywhere. And the Democrats need to be able to draw their line in the sand and say, we are not moving from this point, because the Republicans do that all the time and we just cave to them. And I am very big on compromise, and I understand that neither side should ever leave the table completely happy. But I feel like we should be getting some more things. And the way that we set, and I did come around to my way of thinking on this issue because it was not, my original method of thought was not helpful. Like, we have our majority in the House, we have our majority in the Senate. These are very, very razor thin. But we told everybody to keep on showing up and keep on voting, and keep on showing up and keep on voting. And then we got these things, and suddenly, hey, what's a Joe Manchin? What is that? And why is this ruining everything? I don't understand. Well, my original result was, fuck you, learn civics. That is not helpful. And I understand that is not helpful now. But you can't expect literally everyone to be so laser focused and have that institutional awareness, because they have other things in their lives going on. Like, I don't have to worry about where my next meal comes from. So I have the privilege of being able to figure this stuff out. Now, part of the Democrat problem is everybody from Joe Manchin to AOC, we're a big tent party. We incorporate everyone, and as a result of that incorporation, we have to make sacrifices on all sides. I feel that the party itself has allowed the need for civility, because we know we do need those Republican votes. We've allowed that to be too high a priority. Like, I was never prouder of Nancy Pelosi than when she ripped up Trump's State of the Union on national TV. Like, good for her. I'm with you right there. But she should have said nastier things about him and to him, and this is what he is doing. She's very good. She was very good at the theatrics, but actually fighting was harder. And I'm a big apologist for a lot of the things that the Democrats do, but I think we definitely need to take the lead from the people who are fighting louder and explaining things. Like, I truly think that Bernie Sanders is 100% performative, but I don't think that AOC is. I think she understands exactly what she's doing legislatively and how to get it done. So I think we need to listen to her and act more like her. And the Republicans have no illusions about civility. We are clinging to this outdated concept, but we're a big tent party, and we're so focused on not offending each other that we are letting them walk all over us. And I really do think that a lot of criticism lobbied at the Democrats right now for things is unfair. Like, okay, we didn't codify Roe. It never occurred to us for 50 years that a Supreme Court decision like that would be overthrown. So it was low priority. I get it. I understand. Now that Judge Thomas has said, oh no, this is all up for grabs, we're going to get rid of all of it and burn it to the ground. Now there's a rush to codify access to contraceptions, codify gay marriage, codify everything that he threatened to take away.
And that ain't happening either. They just had the vote. In the House had barely squeaked by the House. And the Senate, they're probably not going to beat the filibuster codifying contraception.
I'm more happy if we get caught trying to do it than if we don't try to do it at all. Like, there are some times when being performative is important. So I want every Republican, especially the ones up for re-election, to go on record and say, no, you have to have a baby every time you have sex. And you can only have sex in a marital bed with an opposite sex partner that you are legally married to. I want them on record saying that.
Well, is Schumer even going to bring that to the floor? Did you hear anything about that?
Schumer's going to bring it to the floor.
He is? Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, he can't not, and he has learned painfully that he has to get caught trying.
Okay.
Like, I understand the need to actually have the votes, but if you don't have the votes, bring it to the floor, lose it, let everyone see how everyone votes. But no, there's not a better way than hitching to the Democratic Party, because as long as the Republican Party exists in its current form, it needs to be balanced out somehow. I want more parties. I want ranked choice voting. I want a national popular vote, all of that. what I want and what we have are not congruent at the moment. So unless I'm willing to settle for 8 years of President DeSantis telling me that I'm not a person, I have to work with what I have available.
Which is the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Merrick. Dan says that the Democratic Party is our vehicle. We just don't need to be as civil as we've been. What's your view?
I skew on the side of democratic socialism, and I came to that realization in that in 2016 I was a delegate for Hillary Clinton at the 2016 Democratic National Convention in the Maryland delegation, because I felt a woman needed to be president, but I was very much, how can I say, in terms policy wise, more left. That being said, I think the Democratic Party is going to have to decide what it wants to be. And like Dan, I am a proud person on the left, and these things need to get done. Like, our tax dollars are being misused for ventures and wars and paying people off, and it's not helping the American people. I don't know how many times one pothole downtown in Baltimore can be fixed multiple times before we understand that there needs to be actual investment and not just patchwork. And I think that the Democrats need to be bolder. We need new, younger leadership. We need to embrace progressive ideals. And I'm not necessarily talking about, defund the police. I'm not saying none of that at all. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, when we start with the economics, we can negotiate with the rest. But we do need an aggressive Democratic Party. The Democrats are not aggressive. And part of me thinks, like I said, I'm a native New Yorker. Oh, yes, I've been in Baltimore for 25 years, but I am a native New Yorker. That being said, the cynic in me says, how do I know some of the higher ups are not, are being feckless on purpose to raise money? How do I know? How do I not know that? I mean, young Dems were screaming when the SCOTUS decision came out, as we thought it was going to come out because of the leak. When it finally came out, and then the next thing you know, bam, a minute later, here come the fundraising emails. Don't give me that. Give me your plan of action. The plan of action should not be just to vote. The plan of action is, these are the detailed steps of what we're going to do right now to make sure that female-bodied people have autonomy. And the Democrats need to either show up or shut up. People are tired. The young people are fed up, and they want some results. And it's showtime. The rehearsal's over.
Yeah, there was a lot of colorful rhetoric in these emails that were all about fundraising. Because at the bottom of every one of these emails about, oh, woe is us, Roe is gone, was the donate button that you were supposed to click on. Thaddeus, the Democrats need to be more aggressive, as Merrick says, and less civil, as Dan says. What do they need to be in your mind?
Okay, well, before I address that, I would like to interject something from earlier in our discussion. I think that we all agreed that taking a victory lap about Joe Manchin was premature. And but I think there might be something positive in what may have led him to that decision. And I don't think that he got his decision by being cajoled by the president. I saw a little analysis of the congressional elections upcoming, there is a possibility that as many as 5 Senate seats could be flipped in November. That's a nice thought. If that is certain enough in the eyes of Joe Manchin, he might be looking at it as, well, he's losing his spotlight.
Mhm.
If the Democrats have a clear majority in the Senate, then his holdout votes are not going to matter. So just, that's just a nice thought to chew on for a while. Now, I'm in perfect agreement with everybody in the room. It would help if Democratic politicians would somehow learn how to play hardball. To be specific, they need to put an ultimatum out that says whatever shenanigans the GOP forgives itself, so too you can expect the Democrats to do the same thing. And if the Republicans call them on it, you've got citations of where the Republicans have done the same damn thing. So if you put up with it yourself, you'll put up with us doing it. And that's the line in the sand that needs to be drawn. It needs to be specific and it needs to be unambiguous.
Isn't that exactly what happened with Merrick Garland not giving a hearing and Amy Coney Barrett giving a hearing? Like right at election time, she got the hearing, and it was like 7, 8, 9 months prior to Merrick Garland. So they did do that hypocritical thing you were talking about, but it doesn't seem like they were really held accountable for that.
No, they broke the rules or made a new rule for themselves about Merrick Garland, and then broke their own rule to get Amy Coney Barrett. Right. So they don't really care about obeying rules. They just make up whatever rules are convenient for them at the moment. Okay, so let's have some Democrats making up their own rules to be convenient and see where it gets them.
Okay, I'm with you there. Mm-hmm. Given what you know about Germany's Nazi Party of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and the Republican Party as currently constructed in America today, what ideological differences can you identify when comparing both parties to each other? Thaddeus, I know you did some research on this question.
Yes.
What are the differences between the Nazis and the Republicans?
Well, I had to research how to say it in German. Ein Wort, keinen.
You have to translate, pal.
One word, none.
You could, okay. That's what I figured. That would be a short answer. All right, Merrick, do you see any difference between the Nazi Party of the 20s, 30s, and 40s and what the Republicans are today?
They're not walking around in little brown shirts. They got yellow shirts now and some other stuff. And what else? I mean,
so different uniforms, different uniforms
and the internet. So
no brown shirts, but Trump T-shirts and MAGA
right,
hats.
Right, and then remember the whole khaki thing they did, and they keep doing the Patriot Front showing up with khakis and all of that. I think this is the problem. We treat Omar, who might have had, let's say, a couple of ounces of weed on him, right? Like he's a stone cold criminal, lock him up. But we don't treat,
Cletus.
We don't treat them and their terrorist tendencies. So I have a problem with that. Because I personally believe if we would put the hammer down on a lot of these knucklehead white supremacists, they would not jump up to get beat down. They'd be too scared.
Yeah.
Remember now, a lot of this comes from racist video games, They apparently there's this like racist network of people who like play video games with each other or whatever. Then they've got Gab, Telegram, and all that other stuff. So this stuff just kind of metastasizes like a brain cancer, if you will. And I mean, I personally believe as a person of faith that it's a spiritual cancer. That being said, I'm at a point where it's like, well, where does it end? You know, and who's going to be held responsible for the proliferation of these wicked ideas that are not just an affront to certain people in society, but a destabilizing force in society, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We see the destabilization occurring as we speak. Okay, Dan, the difference between the Republicans and the Nazis. You see anything different?
Well, most Europeans speak multiple languages, while most of our Republican Party can barely speak English. Then a lot of the German workforce during the rise of Nazism were effectively working for the government, and I don't see the Republicans being able to take boring bureaucratic level jobs in that way. The Nazis also, and I don't want to like be defending them, but they were getting something out of it. Like the Republican Party had a strong economy when they rose to prominence more recently in their current incarnation. Like Barack Obama left a very, very good and happy economy in his wake, whereas the Nazis were coming out of World War I reparations. So they seem to be getting things that I don't think the current Republicans are getting in exchange for being so evil. I don't understand where I don't see a tangible benefit for them. They're selling themselves on an ideal. And I mean, I guess when you're cold and hungry, it's easier to look the other way about a lot and sell your soul. But if you're not, and you're just afraid that maybe the black person you're competing against might best you on merit because you might actually be equal, I feel like that's a whole extra level of vile and racist that we're not really talking about, because I don't see what benefit the great replacement people are so afraid of. I don't see what they're getting out of it. I think they're sold on a terrifying idea, and I'm just not sure how they can justify this to themselves. And I've heard them try, and the words don't make any sense to me.
Okay, you're segueing me to the very last question in our discussion tonight. How much is race a contributing factor in the minds of the disciples of each ideology? And how do you see it manifested in particular policy positions that each side holds? Dan, I'll let you go ahead, because Merrick's got to take the last one on this one to wrap it up. So, Dan, what do you think about how much is race an issue that cements people in the different ideological positions they hold?
I think we all need to acknowledge that we do live in a country that's built on white supremacy, and if we benefited from it, we need to understand that that's the case. And I want to say that I do, but I can honestly say that I do not realize all the ways that my privilege was built on other people not having it and being exploited. There was back in 2016, Beyonce released her album Lemonade. I love Beyonce. That album was not written for me. That album was written for Black women, and the critical response to it was very negative from white people, because we had something that was not intended for us, and usually everything is. So yeah, we are in a time when race is really important. If I can't see a color, I can't see a pattern. So I really hate that expression. I don't see color, because it's not true. You do see color. We all see color.
Yeah.
But I really do think that we are at a point where we need to, if we are gonna become that true multiracial democracy that is supposed to be part of the promise of America, we need to all accept that, yes, we have benefited from the system, or we have been oppressed by it. And there are a million ways in which I know I have. Like, I was, my childhood was financed by money from the carceral state. That's a reality that we all live with now. It wasn't intentionally a racist thing, but there were racist practices that enabled that job to exist. So that's the thing that happened. And I accept that it did happen. And now I want to make sure that we can dismantle that carceral state.
Okay, Thaddeus, how important is racism in the cementing the ideological positions of the people on both ideologies, both sides, left and right?
Well, racism shoots through every facet of both sides. And I was hunting for a word to kind of wrap this up, because it bounces right off of what Dan was just saying. And the quote was from Elie Wiesel, who was talking about oppression. But his quote was not germane to this. What I came up with is very simply this, that oppression is almost impossible for the oppressor to see. And that's because we are, at least 3 of the 4 of us, are part of the oppressor group in this country. And I am still learning at 70 years of age the many, many ways in which my part of society has oppressed the other part. And trying to see it clearly, trying to find it in everyday things is going to be a lifelong effort. But we just have to be aware that as oppressors, we don't see that we are oppressing the oppressed people, whom we do see, but we don't quite see everything about them.
Okay, Merrick, Thaddeus brought up a great point that we have three white guys here on this panel. And even though I think all 3 of us recognize that there has been oppression and that we belong to that particular group of oppressors, at least we're trying to see the issue in a more, I don't know, decent or fair way. I'm gonna let you have the last word on it about race and ideology and how much it has formed each position.
Well, I think that it's six in one and half a dozen in the other, right? So, talking about Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King talked about the white moderate, right? Who was saying, yes, I'm with you, but now is not the time. And then the conservative who would be like, well, we ain't never gonna do it. So, from that space, a lot of folks are like, well, we can't really believe anything. However, I do believe that there's hope. And I believe in hope because I think that social media and entertainment, things of that nature, have changed the game. And I'm really going to say it really started with my generation in that when we look at a music like musical movement like hip hop, which was literally started out of a basement in a community center in the Bronx, New York, and it was West Indian blacks, American blacks, and Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. I mean, this sound has proliferated the globe as such that it has humanized the people that, particularly in America, were at the bottom rung. And that being said, it has also been used for exploitation. Exploitation. That that being said, I think that people of like minds, people who are humanists, people who really want to heal the nation of this thing must decide to join forces. Because at the end of the day, Mother Earth is going to have the last word. And this climate catastrophe stuff is real. And so while we squabble about who is, while we squabble about not letting a black kid go to this school or not letting a trans girl do this, there's a whole climate catastrophe. At some point in time, a day of reckoning would look like us realizing that we're all human beings. But I fear that there are definitely people on the planet that don't care about that and are willing to sacrifice most of humanity for their own selfish ends. And that looks like fomenting the level of disruption that racial enmity causes to distract us from what they're really doing, which is picking our pocket by encouraging these ideas which undermine stability. And in undermining stability, they make money off of that because people want to buy supplies. Gun ownership goes up. Everybody wants to buy a gun. Oil generates. All of that goes up when people think it's the end is near. So to keep people in a constant state of fear and unease and disease, right? Everybody's off kilter. Then this is how we make money. So I do think that people of like minds need to come together and just break out of that dumbass anti-human trance and really say, you know what, we have bigger fish to fry here. I don't really care if you're trans. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're heterosexual. I don't care if you're not heterosexual. Like, I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, whatever. Like, I'm not saying don't see people for who they are, but I'm saying we need to look at people as human beings because our survival will depend on that. Jeff Bezos and them think they're going to escape the earth. It's not going to be like that. It's just not. We got a lot of stuff going on and we need to fix the planet. All this other stuff, human beings fighting among each other is a way to distract us from the danger that we face as a collective of people on the planet.
Okay, and I'm going to jump on that by saying that we need to treat each other and the planet with more decency and less cruelty. So I want to thank the panel. What a great discussion tonight, guys. Thaddeus, Dan, Merrick, really appreciate your taking the time and being with us and our viewers. And to all those out there in Cyberland listening to this discussion and the future discussions, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.